There's one big piece of news we've been waiting, which is GPT 5.2, the update to 5.1, and in response to Google's Gemini 3, which put OpenAI into code red last week. They pushed out a model quickly, and we see the results. It's good. I've been playing around with it this morning. I'm going to have to formulate my own full opinions over the weekend by actually using it, coding with it, building with it. From first impressions, great. What I like to do is always have a task I'm unable to do. With the previous model, there's always something I run into, whether it's using GPT 5.2 or Claude. There's always something I can't do, or for some reason AI hasn't been able to do it for me. When a new model comes out, I immediately try it with that task. This sounds like a silly example, but this particular release, there's a computer game I used to play when I was a child. I had snatches of memory about it, little bits in my head. I was trying to identify what it was. I've tried this with all of the previous models and I've never been able to do. I know this is silly, but I cracked it this morning. It's a game called Virus 2000, which was on the PC. But ChatGPT 5.2 was able to walk me through and help me identify this game. None of the other models have been able to do that so far. So far, that is my big win with it. A very silly, a very trivial example, but the previous models have been unable to help me do. So I'm pleased with that. I'm going to be, as I say, testing it fully over the weekend, getting it loaded up into Cursor and building some stuff. So far, impressed. So is everyone else, it looks like. Let's look at the benchmarks. We have to take benchmarks with a pinch of salt. We need to see what other people are saying, and we need to ultimately use it ourselves and see how it fits into our workflow. However, we start with the benchmarks. So, how are they? Good. Really good. Actually, I'll pull up this table. This is the ARC-AGI 2 leaderboard. The most recent one was a couple of weeks ago with Gemini 3 Pro knocking it out of the park. This is Gemini 3 Pro. It was higher than anything else at the time because Opus 4.5 and GPT 5.2 were not out. This graph used to be down here. They've had to extend the scales because of 5.2. So this is Gemini 3 Pro. This green one up here, they've left this out. This is Gemini 3 Pro Deep Think, which is a more experimental model. So Google still have something in play up here. But as you can see, the GPT 5.2 are dominating. So we have had another step change in terms of the ARC-AGI 2 evaluation. It's the closest we have, the proxy, the benchmark for getting close to artificial general intelligence. It's a fuzzy subject, so we're not going to go into that in too much detail. However, GPT 5.2 is doing very well. We've reset the scales. Previously, the graph was a lot more spaced out. Now we've had to increase the y-axis quite a lot. It's almost a logarithmic jump, actually, which means that all of these previous models are now getting squished down into irrelevance down here. What I did want to point out, though, is Grok 4 over here, a refined version of Grok 4, scoring, apparently, on the ARC-AGI 2, 30%, and Gemini 3 is 32%, it looks like. And then we have GPT-5 high and extra high at 44% and 53% roughly. Grok being here, I don't think many people are talking about this. That's impressive. Grok has only been around, so XAI, the creators of Grok, have only been around for a couple of years. They started in March 2023, I believe, so 2.5 years. Compare that to OpenAI, which is actually celebrating its 10th birthday. Yesterday was their 10th birthday, so happy birthday to OpenAI. XAI are doing quite impressive things. Beside what you think about Elon Musk, if you love him or hate him, doesn't really matter. XAI have put out models that are competitive in a very short amount of time, extremely short, because Elon Musk has thrown so much money and so many resources at it that they've been able to brute force their way into the competitive landscape. I think it's impressive. The news of today is GPT 5.2, absolutely knocking it out of the park. What we are going to look at, though, is not just it in the benchmarks, but what does this practically mean for work and life? So looking at Matt Schumer here, he works for AI, and he's talking about rule number 1 in AI. What a frontier model can do today at an extremely high cost will be possible for orders of magnitude less dollars in 12 months. So I think this is subtle but important. So a year ago, ARC-AI verified some results from O3. So O3 was a model that OpenAI put out during their 12 days of Shipmas last year. They released O3 and they're like, ta-da, this is the best model on earth, but it was extremely expensive. It was extremely expensive to run. A year ago, we verified a preview of the unreleased version of OpenAI O3 High. that scored 88% on ARC-AGI 1. Each task cost $4,500. It was an extremely good model, better than every model out there basically, but it cost so much money to run. You had to run it for so long that it wasn't really practical to use it. That was a year ago. So that was the 12 days of Shipmas last December. OpenAI released that. Today, this is ARC Prize saying this, we have verified a new GPT 5 Pro X High state-of-the-art score of 90.5%, so higher than the O3 task, but it cost $11.64. So it's a higher score, and it costs about 400 times less than a year ago. This is the kind of exponential growth that we're seeing right now. And this is why when people are like, oh, AI can't do this or AI can't do that, you need to point them towards these facts. It's getting really good, extremely fast. It's hard to see with language models because they're not as visual as video and image models. But with the language models, it's figures like this. Oh, we're able to do what cost $4,500 a year ago for $11. It's a better model and we'll get even better results. That's a lot for 1 year of progress. Very few technologies move at that clip. Everything is getting better all the time in terms of model progress. I'm going to hop over to some questions and we're going to talk about what this means. It's fine looking at benchmarks, but what does this mean for work? What does this mean for your jobs? What does this mean for how we apply these AIs in real life? I'm going to look at GDP-Val, which is really a useful new benchmark, which is looking at actual human tasks like working in Excel and filling out contracts. First, let's hop over to questions. How do you feel about contextual commerce in socials? So I could buy your top direct contextual. I don't know enough about it. Do you mean being able to see what I'm streaming and buying stuff off the live stream? I don't have anything to sell off the live stream, but I imagine it's good for people who do that stuff. So stuff like TikTok Shop is absolutely huge. It's of no interest to me, although I do buy a lot of junk on TikTok Shop. I don't know about you guys. Every once in a while it will pop something up and I'm like, oh, I don't need that. Oh, it is only £2. And then I'll buy some junk. Grok lies a lot. I've caught it so many times. Interestingly, with GPT 5.2, the hallucination rate is down by 40%. Let me find that data. It might be here, 10 hours ago, Mashable. I don't have that data on me, but I saw it this morning. Here we go. Most notably, AI says GPT 5.2 is more accurate and will produce fewer hallucinations compared to GPT 5.1. OpenAI's documentation states that GPT 5.2 thinking has an average hallucination rate of 10.9%, still quite a lot, compared to 16.8% and 12.7% for GPT-5 thinking and GPT 1.5 thinking. So they've reduced it by, they're down to 10% or 11%, down from 17 or 13%. And then when GPT 5.2 is given access to the web via browser, its hallucination rate drops to about 6%. So hallucinations are still very much a thing, and we need to be careful when we are using any artificial intelligence. We need to check its answers. Domain expertise is useful because you know what to put in, you know what questions to ask, you know how to get the AI to challenge you, you can intelligently work with it. And two, you're able to check the outputs on the other side. You aren't just taking an output from ChatGPT and taking it at face value because you have the expertise to know whether it's talking complete and utter nonsense. So that's why it's important to have a human. However, this is a drop of a couple of percentage points in 2 months. Hallucinations are inherently a part of how large language models work. Everything they generate is a hallucination. Most hallucinations are factually correct, but you have to remember that LLMs don't have a database of knowledge. They don't have a list of true and false facts. That's not how they work. So everything it's creating as it starts to tumble those tokens is a hallucination. Sometimes it's wrong, and that's when we call it a hallucination because we don't want it to be wrong. We want those imaginations to be correct. It is getting better. They are reducing the hallucination rate rapidly. As soon as we give our LLMs access to tools, so the ability to search the internet, the ability to have like agentic workflows where they're checking each other's work, for example, and double checking things, checking references, we can reduce error rates even more. This is the kind of stuff companies like Deloitte need to do because they keep twice this year, Deloitte is being caught basically sending out a report that was full of AI hallucinations, once to the government of Australia and once to a provincial government in Canada as well. You got to be careful. at least for now, until we reduce those solutions. Humans get things wrong too. The speed of development is insane. I worry the infrastructure won't develop as fast. But the bottleneck is potentially going to be electricity. And this is why we're suddenly, a lot of the AI companies like, we're just going to send our data centers up into space. We'll just launch them in a rocket. Seems like this crazy sci-fi idea. Part of the reason is they can have access to infinite electricity. You put a data center up in the sky, cover it in solar panels, have big arrays of solar panels pointing at the sun, and you put it in an orbit always facing the sun. So you have 24 hours a day solar power, plus no atmosphere in the way, so you get even more solar power. That is one thing they're looking at. The other reason is that puts control of the infrastructure into the hands of the AI companies. Right now, they are waiting for the energy industry to get it together. They're waiting for governments to allow for the building of nuclear power stations, of sustainable energy, etc., etc. And that comes with an awful lot of red tape, a huge amount of red tape. In the UK, there's talk about opening a new nuclear power station in Scotland. It's going to take decades because everything takes a long time. We can't even build a railway. This is why people are worried about China, because China do not have this electricity problem, because they have been putting resources into, here we go, into energy generation for decades. This is the US. There's a small upward incline. This is the EU going down, and everyone else is flat, basically. Whereas China realized quite early on that they're going to need an awful lot of power if they are to have a technologically advanced nation. They started investing in infrastructure back in the 90s, 2000s, and they've consistently done so. They now have more than 10 terawatt hours. Let's see if we can pull it up. I'm using AI overviews, so it might be wrong. There's a video about a solar farm bigger than Bristol, which is a city in the UK. They're taking things very seriously when it comes to energy, whereas the West is not. Part of the reason why the AI companies are talking about launching satellites into space is so they do not need to wait for the governments. They do not need to wait for the energy infrastructure. It's that, or build mini nuclear power stations. So Google are looking at doing that. Microsoft are looking at doing that. Basically, these modular power stations that sit next to your data center, and they are run on nuclear. There's a lot of red tape. If you get permission to launch a rocket, you can do what you want in space. At least for now, there will be regulations as we move forward. This is good news for Elon Musk. He has the top commercial star flight, I don't know what you even call it, space flight company on Earth. SpaceX are going to be the companies who are delivering data centers into space because they're set up for that. Google, OpenAI, Microsoft, etc., they're not necessarily going to want to get into the business of building spaceships and rockets. That is a different thing. Whereas Elon Musk has already set up SpaceX. He realized 10 years ago, or whatever it is, that this is going to be important moving forward. And up until now, there's been demand from like telecoms companies to send satellites up into space, but there hasn't been an absolutely killer need to use spaceships. We might now have it. It might now be OpenAI, Google, etc., putting data centers into space. And the person who's going to be doing that will probably be Elon Musk. Kudos. He was very prescient in this case. Morning, Nikki's daughter, one of them. Oh, I think we've had another one of Nikki's daughters. Claude says, I use 4 different LLMs when I'm researching. That's smart. Have them check each other's answers. And you build that into an automated workflow where they catch each other out. I do this sometimes with code, and sometimes they give snarky responses. I'll pass something from ChatGPT to Claude, and Claude will find an error. This ChatGPT seems to have messed up here. Calm down. Very smart from China, investing from the ground up. They are serious about their infrastructure. I was there earlier in the year. I took some trains in China, and the trains in China are phenomenal compared to Europe. And I was about to say America. America doesn't really have trains, or not that many. Quick question, which development platform do you use for vibe coding? For pure vibe, when I don't want to see the code, I use Lovable. When building a project and I want more control, I use Cursor. Specifically inside of Cursor, I use Claude Code, but I use the Cursor interface. Cursor just added the ability to visually see what's going on in the code base. So you have basically a local dev server up and running with your application or your website visible. And you can now click on the elements and directly talk to the LLM. It's up on my screen right now. You are able to see a visual representation. You're able to click on the element you want to work with. And then it's actually got a visual editor, so you can change things directly without using AI, or you can talk to the artificial intelligence and say, hey, this part here that I've just clicked, or the bit that is highlighted, I want some font variations or more white space. They've added a visual editor directly into Cursor. Previously, Cursor was a little bit more of a learning curve to use because it is a traditional development environment, whereas something like Lovable looked like ChatGPT. So you could immediately jump into Lovable and be like, okay, cool, I've got it. Cursor, for a lot of people who have never coded, when they've opened it up for the first time, what? This is scary. It's still more of a learning curve, but they are adding in features like this, visual editors, which make it way more accessible. I don't think Lovable even has this level of visual editor. Like, you can't click on elements and say, I haven't used it for a few weeks, so they might have added that. Very cool things. So I highly recommend Cursor. There's also a cheaper one, Anti-Gravity, which is currently free. Anti-Gravity from Google looks like Cursor because it's good. I am not actually using it. I'm using Cursor, but that's because I already have my projects there. I'm used to using Cursor. But if you want a free alternative, check out Anti-Gravity. It's free for now. I imagine later it will be priced competitively with Cursor. And if you can see on my screen right now, it basically looks like Cursor, or I should say it looks like VS Code, which Cursor is a fork of. I've tried out a bunch of different development environments, but yeah, Cursor's very good. Does Cursor ship to the Apple Store? Yes, so you'll have to go through Xcode to do the kind of final testing and then shipping, but you can build Swift apps. You can build in any language. Lovable will default to Vite, which is good at web apps, but it's not going to help you build an app which goes on the telephone, an iPhone, and it's also not good for building websites where you need search engine optimization. So it's very specific. You can convert from Lovable. Once you build your app, you can convert it into an iPhone app. It's just additional steps. Whereas if you build in Cursor from scratch, it's going to build in Swift. It's going to build in whatever you need to natively go to the App Store. You still need to go through Xcode for validation, but that's minor. Cursor's brilliant. Do not let the IDEs have access to system level prompt. Yes. I think it was on Anti-Gravity. Was it Anti-Gravity recently? It nuked somebody's hard drive because they'd given it full access to their file system and it formatted everything on it. I don't know why they were running it out of the root directory. I do, because I didn't know what they were doing. But then Gemini was like, oh yeah, I see the problem. Sorry, I've formatted it. So it is a problem. Okay, so we've looked at GPT 5.2. And yes, it's great on the benchmarks, etc. What does that actually mean for the day-to-day? So I want to look at GDP-Val, similar to GPT. We're going to look at the GPT 5.2 GDP-Val, which is an evaluation which tests models on activities that contribute to GDP, gross domestic product. So supposedly these activities are economically valuable. We're going to look at what Fijisimo, I love that name. She is the head of applications, CEO of applications, OpenAI. Such a cool name. So she says, I'm going to follow her. GPT 5.2 is the best model for everyday professional work. Okay, fine. Show us. On GDP-Val, the thinking model beats or ties human experts on 71% of tasks, like spreadsheets, presentations, and document creation. That's a lot. The other way to read this is it is better at or equal at 70% of tasks as humans. It's also better at general intelligence, writing code, tool calling, vision, and long context understanding, so it can unlock even more economic value for people. Early feedback is excellent, and I can't wait for you to try it out. GDP-Val is an evaluation for measuring the performance of our models on real-world tasks. This is a ChatGPT generated evaluation. So OpenAI created this evaluation. So we have to take it with a pinch of salt because they know what goes into this evaluation. Therefore, they can overfit, they can train their model for it. However, it is open, like you can have a look at it, and other people run on GDP-Val. So they have the paper, they have the leaderboard. Let's look at the leaderboard here. I assume 5.2 is top. Parity with industry expert. Across all tasks, GPT 5.2 is 49.7%, and 71% is wins and ties. Okay, and then they have it broken down by the actual markets. So let's have a look. So customer service, it wins, and it's much better than humans. They're using 50% accuracy as the benchmark. In customer service, it's 75% wins and 82% wins and ties. They put it up against humans. It is knocking out all the competitors in every single task, or not in editors, interestingly. Very interesting. So Opus 4.5 is still winning here. But again, the bigger news here is that they are generally beating the humans. So the fact that it gets, let me put it back, 70.9% wins or ties against humans. It wins 50% of the time and wins or ties 70% of the time against humans on tasks. So this does mean that a lot of tasks can be removed from humans. And that obviously has large impacts on jobs. So a job is, this isn't replacing jobs specifically, this is replacing subtasks within a job. Because every job you do is not just one thing. You don't just do one task again and again. Generally, you have admin, you have operational stuff, you have meetings, you have all of the other stuff around your core task. So things like spreadsheets, presentations, document creation, etc. The GPT 5.2 is extremely good at, better than humans in a lot of cases. That does not necessarily mean that the core task of your job, whatever that is, that the AI is better at it. It does not protect you from the future though, because as we saw, this is moving extremely fast into all areas of human intelligence. I think this has gone under the radar, that it is better or equal to human experts on 70% plus of GDP positive tasks. That's the scary thing, because we look at these models and wow, it's really good. That 70% should be scary. Even if you're very pro AI, that should stop you in your tracks and be like, oh, here we go. This might be it. We are very close to whatever AGI looks like, and basically removing tasks from our jobs and removing jobs entirely. If we're not there next year, we will be in a year or two, because everything is moving extremely fast. It doesn't matter how positive you are about artificial intelligence, that 70% should cause concern. And then this is compared to the previous models. So GPT-5 thinking fell way below. It's about 40% wins and ties. GPT 5.2 thinking is now at 71%. GPT 5.2 Pro in the $200 a month package is about 75%, winning or tying with human knowledge workers on various tasks. The tasks, they actually have a whole list of them, which is really interesting. So like in, let's have a look. Oh no, these are the particular jobs. So professional, scientific and technical, it's software developers, lawyers, accountants, auditors, project management. Financial insurance, it's customer service representatives, financial managers, financial investment analysis, etc. It has the jobs and tasks broken up as well. I'll put this in the newsletter because GDP-Val is really cool. It's a very cool evaluation and it's worth looking into because this gives us a more realistic idea of whether or not these AIs can take jobs. The other benchmarks like the International Math Olympiad or Humanities Last Exam, they're quite abstracted from what we do on the day-to-day, which is Excel spreadsheets and presentations and talking to customers and meetings. The core work, that's the stuff that we need to be looking at where AI is having an impact. Amazon has foundational tools. Where's their place in the AI future world? So they actually have a couple of good models. I always forget the names of them because they don't really publish them. They're focusing on the enterprise and the B2B market. So as adjuncts to AWS, Amazon Web Services. So unlike a lot of the other AI companies who are going for kind of wide popular markets, Amazon are just beavering away in the background, providing enterprise level LLMs. And they have, what's it called? Nova. There we go. Is it Nova? Yes, Amazon Nova. So it's foundation models, and they're good. They're solid models, quietly building in the background. Here we go. We've got the Nova models. Nova 2 Lite, Nova 2 Pro, Nova 2 Omni. These are for fine-tuning and training yourself. So you'll be deploying them inside of your enterprise. So they're aiming at the enterprise end of the market because honestly, that's where a lot of the money is. ChatGPT and OpenAI are hemorrhaging money right now, whereas certain companies like Amazon are just quietly in the background building products for existing customers who already have a lot of money. They are deploying them into AWS with these clients and making a huge amount of money. Their consumer play is Anthropic. So they've invested into Anthropic, the makers of Claude. I forget how much. They've done a second round. This was back in March. They invested another 4 billion into Anthropic. And they've committed 8 billion in total. We do not know what percentage they own, if any. And AWS is the preferred cloud provider for models, similar to how Microsoft invested into OpenAI. OpenAI is built on Azure, Microsoft's cloud computing. So they build, train, and run inference off Azure. OpenAI is bundled into Microsoft Copilot, which, as you've heard me talk about, I don't think much of it. They managed to mute ChatGPT somehow. Anthropic and Amazon have something similar, where Amazon put a lot of money into Anthropic. They run on AWS instances, do training there. I wouldn't be surprised if Amazon swallows up Anthropic and brings them in-house. Anthropic is eyeing an IPO, which would make them independent, but allow Amazon to convert into equity after the IPO or cash out. Amazon are doing their own thing quietly. For enterprise customers, they don't care about the general public. That's not where the money is. It's a lot better to sell to people who have money, generally. And Amazon know this. What's the YouTube channel? The same as TikTok. Look up I am Kyle Balmer or AI with Kyle and it should pop up. The Great Divide is coming. Those who aren't learning will be at a disadvantage. Part of my mission is to help 1 million people get AI ready to get on board with what's happening so they're not caught unawares, basically. Because if 10 years down the line you are refusing to use this technology, you're going to be like somebody who never learns to use a computer or somebody who doesn't learn to use the internet. It's just going to put you at a massive disadvantage for most things, especially work. I see people now who don't use computers and don't use the internet and think, wow, what a great life they have because they're detached from that. But it is going to make life a lot harder. That has to be an extremely conscious decision to not involve yourself with these technologies. And that's fine. I respect that. Engage with it intelligently and decide, no, I'm not going to use this. I'm going to pursue my art. Fine, 100%. What I'm seeing, though, is not people who are intelligently engaging and deciding to refuse, conscientious objectors. It's not that, but instead it's people who are burying their head in the sand and coming up with excuses because they don't want to engage with what is happening. They don't want to deal with the fact that this is a threat to their jobs. They don't want to deal with the fact that a degree and skills acquired over the last decade might be worth nothing. That is a very scary feeling. Ethan Mollick, in his book Co-Intelligence, talks about how thinking about this will have 3 sleepless nights. Once they start to use AI and they start to realize what this means for humanity, they'll have 3 sleepless nights where they're going through all the ramifications, all the horrors that could happen. It takes a few days to process this and realize it is happening. I've catastrophized, gone into worst case scenarios, and now I need to work out what my life is going to look like moving forward, what the life of my family and my community is going to look like moving forward, and how can we carve out the best space for ourselves? How can we make sure it's not just the billionaires or trillionaires now who are doing well from this? And how do I protect myself from the downsides, etc., etc.? And that requires intelligent engagement. And that's scary. That's really scary to do. But it is super required, unfortunately. That's why I'm doing these lives, putting out guides, talking about this stuff. I want to make sure people getting their bloody heads out of the sand and getting ready for what's coming. Random question. Do you make automations? Is your favorite N8N, Make, or Zapier? I use them all. Zapier for basic things, set and forget. For example, I have this community. When you join, I ping emails to my server and vice versa. If you join my newsletter, I ping the email to the community. I use Zapier because it's not complicated. It's just adding a pipe and sending information from one place to another. Very simple. When I am doing something more complex, like I built a tool which scrapes TikTok videos. So I give it a username. It will go through and scrape all of the TikTok videos. I use make.com along with modules like for Appify. N8N I use for self-hosting. You can self-host N8N on your server and run it in the background. Really cool. Also, N8N are releasing version 2, I think on the 15th. I'm very excited about that. I'm going to be jumping back into N8N next week. I should be doing Christmas shopping, but no, I'm going to be building N8N automations. They're all good, really good. However, more and more, I am just building them in Cursor. If I need to connect my website, this website that you see here, let's say it's got some tools. The AI business quiz, for example, gives you information at the end, and then it has an email capture which says, oh, do you want to get more information? Do you want to get a custom report? And if you do, give your email. Previously, I would have set it up so the email is sent via Zapier. Now I've custom coded that using the API, so it just connects and I don't need to use any third-party tools. That is possible because of something like Cursor. That is possible because of something like Lovable. You talk to your AI and you say, hey, I've got this website. The website is built in such and such. These are the frameworks I'm using. It's hosted here. And I want to move the information from there over to here. How do I do that? The coding tool will be like, okay, cool, no problem. I need this API key. I need such and such details. We'll get it all connected. You can actually bypass the tools like Zapier, make.com, and NA10 to a certain extent. You can also code your own flows. This is the back end of my website. I've built an automation which pulls all my videos from YouTube automatically. And once it does that, it connects them to existing newsletter issues on the website. So let's say this one. This has been pulled from YouTube. It also pulls in the transcript, the description, and then it runs that through AI in order to generate some more stuff. And it connects it to the newsletter issue. Let's see if this works. Yep, I was worried that wouldn't work because we're live on stream. So that's being connected to the newsletter issue automatically. And that automation is happening in the background, all built by the vibe coding tool. Previously, I would have used make.com to do that. I'm using the automation tools less because I can now build automations directly. I can build pieces of software. Again, I am not a coder. I am a marketer. I start businesses. But the fact that we have tools like Cursor makes it possible to build automations. I'm excited about this. I'm about to build a tool that auto-generates variations of Facebook adverts. I have a product. I want to start running some more adverts. To do that, I want to generate hundreds and hundreds of variations of a Facebook ad. So I'm going to find good Facebook ads that work well. You can find them on the Facebook library, as well as swipe files. I'm going to feed them into a tool that I'm going to build. I'm going to provide the details of my product, and it's going to spit out hundreds of variations with different headlines, taglines, different images, etc. That was something that I wouldn't have been able to do a year ago. Now I'm confident I can build an internal tool and have that working this afternoon. I think this is what's exciting about vibe coding, the ability to turn ideas into reality quickly. I highly recommend it as a skill to build up. Don't build anything complicated for your first project, but start with something simple, and that kind of unlocks your imagination. You're like, oh, could I do this? Could I do that? Generally, the answer is yeah. It doesn't need to be enterprise level security and scalable to work for 10,000 users, because most of the time it's just something that you're going to be using as your own tool, so it doesn't matter. So ignore the naysayers. Do you use Vercel? Yes, I do. I do use Vercel. There's plenty of other alternatives. Netlify is good, but I use Vercel personally. Awesome. I need to learn Cursor. With Cursor, there's not a huge amount to learn. Do a quick tutorial to familiarize yourself with the interface. The main thing is choosing the right model and learning the structure for a vibe coding tool. If you can use Lovable, you can use Cursor. You just need to get over the interface issues. Yes, I will try that. I'm going to be doing retargeting. Don't assume your app is secure to release to the public from vibe coding if you don't know code. Yes, 100%. I personally use vibe coding for internal projects, 100%. Although I have sold things vibe coded too. Google AI has been fab for building apps. Google AI Studio is great. It just has a terrible UI and UX. They added this build mode a month or two ago. If you've used Lovable, this is the same, where you describe your idea and it will build it for you. The main limitations are it uses Gemini. That's fine though, because Gemini is now very good. Previously, not so good. And this is free. So this is a really good way to start using a vibe coding tool if you don't want to pay. They make money. Later, as if you do deploy, if you want to scale this, then you'll pay for the API usage. So you're basically paying every time it contacts Gemini 3. Each message back and forward is like 0.00 whatever dollars, is very small. So it's only at volume where this starts to matter. If you have millions of people, not millions, thousands of people sending messages, your bill will mount up. Hopefully by that point you have some monetization in place. But don't worry about the problems of success until you've started building. Just play around with this, it's great. I tried using Google AI Studio, but kept getting stuck at authorization. So switched to Replit, is great too. Honestly, Lovable, V0, Base 44, God, there's probably some others. They're all good. Because they're all basically interfaces that sit on top of ChatGPT or Claude, and then they just interface between. So that's how they make money. They're just making a small cut on top of that API usage. But as long as Claude is good, as long as ChatGPT is good, you're going to get good results. And that also means that the vibe coding tools get better and better because these models get in better and better, which is cool. Replit is really good if you're building apps like for a phone as well, whereas Lovable tends to be very specifically for web apps. Cursor is a level above, yes. So the way this is very vague and there's a lot of overlap, but I would say start with Lovable to get a feel of what you can build, start with basic projects too. With Lovable, it will deal with your backend, so your database and all of that kind of stuff automatically. They have Lovable Cloud. So it just removes a lot of friction. So you don't have to set up your own super base. You don't need to connect it to things. You don't even need to use GitHub initially. You don't need to get your own AI API key. It's all done inside of Lovable. So it removes a lot of the friction so that you can just start and you can come up with something basic. The downside of that is it removes some control from you. That is the trade-off. They're making things a lot easier by making it more integrated, by making it kind of seamless, but you lose some control. Once you feel constricted by that, once you're starting to think, oh, how can I do this? And you realize that, oh, wait, I actually can't do this in Lovable. Once you get to that point, that's the time to move to something like Cursor. So Cursor looks intimidating when you first open it because it looks like a traditional development environment. It's based off VS Code, so it is a traditional development environment. But on the right-hand side, there's basically a chat window, and that's where you're going to be doing most of your work, at least initially. What it does is it allows you to see more. Let me see if I can pull up a screenshot of it so you can see. It looks more intimidating. This is what it looks like. There we go. So it looks like that. So initially, for a lot of people, that's terrifying because it looks very professional. But what you've got on the right-hand side, this is basically a chat panel. You have a little chat screen down here. You can select the model you want to use here. This is all in Russian, which doesn't really help. Then you can see your code here. If you don't want to see your code, you don't need to look at it. Ideally, you start to investigate and learn how to code as well, but you can wait for that. On the left-hand side, you can see your files, or the files staged and ready to go to GitHub. Initially, if you've never coded before, that's going to scare you. So start with Lovable and then move on to Cursor. Once comfortable using Cursor, check out Claude Code. So Claude Code is basically an agent which works. You can put it inside of Cursor. That's what I personally do. So then I have all of the benefits of Cursor, like being able to see my files, being able to see everything here, the preview window, etc. But I'm running Claude Code as the agent. So instead of using this chat window on the right-hand side, I'm using Claude Code. That's just a personal preference. That said, Cursor have their own model called Composer, which you can use in this window. Very good, extremely good. So that is an option as well. But these are things to worry about later. Start with a basic project to stretch your wings and realize that, oh, damn, can it do this? Can it do that? And realizing, yeah, it can do these things. And then once you get the bug, you can expand out. This is also why I don't recommend people that they dive into coding first, because learning to code normally is quite dull. There are courses, there are big, very thick books, although I'm not sure if anyone uses them anymore. And it's just a bit of a slog. That's great if you want to build a strong foundation of job later. Absolutely. And you should maybe still do that anyway, because it's really useful to know how code works, how architecture works, etc. I recommend you start vibe coding to get excited by the activity of building. Once you have that, you learn the fundamentals, get the excitement first, then worry about the details as you move forward. It's a bit like when you learn to fly. If you are getting your private pilot's license, the first thing they do is they get you up in a plane and they say, all right, turn left, turn right. And there's very little theory, there's very little kind of preparation for that. They just get you into that plane so you can move it around. I was learning to sail this summer. It's the same thing. They got us in a dinghy, showed us how to move it around, and then back to the classroom to learn what we were doing. Same with coding. You get the bug by building stuff that's useful for you, building stuff that you can show your friends and be like, hey, this is cool, and then get the fundamentals. But only once you've got the excitement for building stuff. That's my recommendation. You can't ship from Lovable. You can ship from Lovable. I've got a few things. I ship this from Lovable. This is from Lovable. These are products I've shipped out of Lovable. Lovable generally creates web apps specifically. So they sit in a browser. You cannot easily ship to iOS or Android. That's a different ecosystem. There are ways to convert from Lovable into Swift or whatever you need for your telephone. It just adds a few more steps. It depends what you want to build. Generally, work out what you want to build, talk to ChatGPT or Cursor beforehand and say, this is my technical level. This is what I want to build. These are the tools I'm looking at. Replete, Bolt, I'm looking at Lovable, I'm looking at Cursor, etc. What would you recommend? And it will be able to give you good recommendations. That's the kind of question you can ask in the community. If you come to community.ai with Kyle, people are asking questions and I'm in there answering, as well as other people who know a lot more about stuff than me. So again, I'm not a coder. So we have other people in the community who are, they're software developers, so they will be able to jump in with much better understanding. This is a free community, by the way. And if you do want to get in, come to aiwithkyle.com and click join community. Is it secure? So most security that you'll be doing, not all security, but most security is going to be on the back end. So if you're using something like Superbase, a lot of security will live there. You need the front end of your app to be secure to secure your back end too. You can use something like SemGrep. It's not called SemGrep. You can use AI analysis of your application. There we go. Community edition is free to scan your app. Lovable and Cursor have built-in security scanners which will pick out the most egregious problems. They'll be like, oh, you've actually published your environment variables and people can see your API key. It will catch that kind of stuff. That doesn't mean it's going to be 100% secure, but that's the kind of thing that you can worry about as you start to scale. I find it's not helpful to think of all of the things that can go wrong immediately, but as we start to build, we deal with them as they come up. If security is a big issue, you can hire somebody. If it's such a large issue before public launch, which is going to be the case if you're building a medical app, a legal app, etc., then you hire a security consultant. You give them $10,000 to test and make sure you're okay. Is your community based in school? No, it's in Circle. I did look at moving to school, but school is very basic. It's very basic. If you are looking for a school community, though, which talks about vibe coding in particular, I will recommend Marcin's. So my friend Marcin runs AI Builders, which is school.com/AI Builders. I'm active in there. It's $50 a month. So it's not free, but it's a very good community and very active. Okay. Oh, wow. We're coming up on the hour. Looked at Cursor, GPT 5.1. I think I'll quickly talk about this because I can't not. So Disney are investing $1 billion into OpenAI. This is a weird drawing up of battle lines, I think, because Netflix are talking about purchasing Warner Brothers' own DC Comics. So Netflix, I think, are doing this as an AI play. So they're going to be able to train artificial intelligences on intellectual property shifting into AI TV and film production. This also suggests that Disney are doing the same. So Disney own Marvel. So interestingly, we have a DC versus Marvel, but going to different tech companies. So we have Disney and OpenAI and Marvel on one side, and we have Netflix, Warner Brothers, and DC on the other. Very interesting. Disney is making a $1 billion investment in OpenAI and will allow characters on Sora AI video generator. So this is a really interesting deal because when you think about it, should OpenAI be paying Disney to use the AI, to use Spider-Man and Elsa, etc.? Should OpenAI be paying Disney for that? Or should Disney be paying OpenAI to put them into Sora? It's a big question, and I'm sure one that's been debated. I think this is some kind of barter deal. So this is what we have specifically. So it's a 3-year licensing agreement. Sora will be able to generate short, user-prompted social videos that can be viewed and shared by fans, drawing on more than 200 Disney, Marvel, Pixar, and Star Wars characters. That's a hell of a roster when it comes to IP. Agreement will make the selection of these fan-inspired Sora video short form available to stream on Disney+. So you can make Sora videos using Disney characters, and then they'll go onto Disney+. Interestingly, Netflix announced Shorts. They are releasing a new part of the platform, short videos, vertical feed. This is coming out shortly, vertical feed inside of the Netflix app like TikTok. So it looks like both Disney and Netflix are wanting to push into short form video like like TikTok and Instagram Reels. Makes sense because that's how a lot of content is consumed, for better or worse. Disney and OpenAI affirm a shared commitment to responsible use of AI, blah, blah, blah. Alongside the licensing agreement, Disney will become a major customer of OpenAI, using its APIs to build new products, tools, and experiences, including for Disney Plus, and deploying ChatGPT for its employees. Okay, so Disney is also going to be using OpenAI or ChatGPT inside of its business, which is a huge client. Disney will make a $1 billion equity investment in OpenAI and receive warrants to purchase additional equity. Interesting, especially with the IPO coming up. This is a fascinating deal because it's not just we're going to give you money, you're going to give us this. It's a whole kind of patchwork of different deals, different elements going together. Kudos to whoever put this together. It's hard to tell who's going to do better from this because $1 billion is not that much when it comes to AI investment. But I think the bigger win here is the ability to generate Disney characters inside of Sora. This was already doable before they cut down the restrictions. So this is not a training agreement, interestingly, because Sora and ChatGPT and the image gen have trained on Disney's intellectual property without permission. Everybody's intellectual property without permission. This does not retroactively say that was okay, which is probably good for OpenAI. That would open the doors to every single IP holder saying, hey, you're paying Disney. You've got a deal with Disney for this. We want a deal too for the training. So there's a lot of interesting commercials and legal shenanigans. But this is like Disney saying it's fine that you trained on our content. And now we are giving you permission to use them for 3 years. And we're going to give you money. Very interesting. It's very much an interlinking of the businesses. It's going to be fascinating to see. Disney is a huge company and they are an IP company. They own intellectual property. That's how they make their money. So for them to open it up to Sora will be very, very interesting. Strange timing too, just as development of Sora has been put on hold for 8 weeks. They've said, we're not touching it while we sort out our main models. This is odd timing, but I'm sure they have their reasons. I've talked for an hour, so I'm going to finish up. Thank you so much. If you are not already subscribed, make sure you subscribe to the newsletter. In that, you'll get a written summary of what's been covered in the live stream, as well as links to the YouTube video, which is all cleaned up and tidied. You can find it all there. You can join the community, totally free. The community is bundled in with the newsletter. There will be the live stream in the morning and discussion of what was on the live stream inside the community, and a newsletter to keep up to date. There are also a bunch of courses all available on the website. There's a full 10-week course about how to start a business using artificial intelligence. Niche navigators about working out what business you should start, etc., etc. AI Building 101 is vibe coding. There's a lot of information here, as well as about 90 plus playbooks, also going into a lot of details about what kind of businesses and what kind of things you can do with AI to make money, because that's my focus: AI, marketing and business. Awesome. Thank you. So make sure you are subscribed over on the newsletter and join the community. Also, it really helps if you can subscribe on YouTube. We're about to hit 11,000 subscribers, which is awesome. So thank you so much for that. And I will see you on Monday. I'm going to spend the weekend with GPT 5.2. I'd love to hear what everyone else thinks about it too, because me giving my opinion is one opinion, but we need more. So if you hop into the community, I'll stick up a thread saying, hey, how's everyone finding it? Good, bad? What do you think? So come join the discussion. Thank you, and I'll see you